This is your tech news briefing for Thursday, January 26th. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. The tech industry has been hit hard by layoffs. For those keeping track, more than 200,000 roles have been cut in tech since the start of 2022, according to Layoffs.fyi, a website that tracks the cuts. Among those making large staff reductions are Google parent Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta. Notably not on that list, Apple. So what has kept the iPhone maker from announcing layoffs, and will it be able to keep bucking that trend? Joining me to talk about this is our Apple reporter, Aaron Tilley. Hi, Aaron. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
A lot of other tech companies scaled up during the pandemic, adding, more people to their headcounts, and they're now having to rethink those staffing numbers in the face of some changing economic conditions. Is Apple in the same boat?
No, Apple is not in the same boat. Throughout the pandemic for the past 3 years, pretty much all the big tech players really escalated their workforce, grew it by quite a bit, except Apple. Apple was really conservative in its workforce growth. It grew about 20% over the past 3 years, while other companies like Amazon doubled, Microsoft 50, Alphabet 57, and Meta also around doubling their workforce.
Why didn't Apple grow at that same pace?
Well, Apple has always been much more of a leaner company than the rest of tech. They're very conservative. They try to make the most out of what they currently have. The last actual real set of mass layoffs happened back in 1997 when Steve Jobs returned to the company as an effort to save the company that was under a lot of pressure. So throughout the history, they've just been slowly but steadily growing, but always been very leanly run.
Is there something about Apple's business model that has made it more resilient than some of these other companies?
Well, I think a lot of these other companies have been a lot more vulnerable to shifts in the economy. During the height of the pandemic, their businesses really accelerated, but coming out of it, they've hit some snags, they've hit some troubles, especially in the digital ad markets. E-commerce, those have slowed down quite a bit. Some of that slowdown in the digital ad markets has been due to changes Apple has made, actually. So Apple's partially the cause of that slowdown, but also there's just broader slowdowns economically happening. And with Apple's business, the iPhone still reigns supreme. It is still around 50% of their business, and demand really hasn't subsided that much. The big trouble for them is making enough, and there's certainly a lot of troubles there in manufacturing these phones.
You mentioned Apple running kind of a lean business when it comes to staffing. I mean, are there other ways that they run the business that have kind of helped keep them on track to avoid some of the job cuts other companies are having to make?
Well, the main thing is how conservative they grew their workforce. But, there's all sorts of little other things on top. They don't offer free lunches, unlike a lot of the other tech players. It's not huge, but it's interesting, and I think symbolic of Apple's leanness. Other tech giants also don't offer free lunch, but companies like Alphabet and Meta, they are kind of famous for their employee perks, and Apple just never did that.
What about in terms of investing in other products? I mean, not only did a lot of big tech companies add body count, they also added new projects during the pandemic, kind of thinking these good times would roll. Did Apple follow any of that model?
Yeah, so Meta and Alphabet are also famous for these really ambitious projects that will probably never pan out in terms of making real business out of them. Apple has some ambitious projects itself that are certainly risky, such as a AR, VR headset supposed to come out later this year, and they're trying to build their own car. It's really uncertain when that'll come out, but these projects that Apple is building out, there is a rationale, there is I think, fundamental business plan in place they are trying to execute on.
Apple is reporting its earnings next week. What do we expect from that?
Well, Apple just went through its holiday quarter with its brand new iPhone 14s. And the thing that happened in this previous cycle was that manufacturing just went crazy for them. China, where Apple manufactures pretty much all of its phones, really had some issues with its zero COVID policies. Their most important facility is iPhone City with hundreds of thousands of workers shut down over some of these zero COVID policies. There were protests and riots, and manufacturing really slowed down for them. The wait times reached the highest that they've ever seen for a new iPhone launch. And so what we're going to see, I think, is some disappointment in the numbers. Analysts, though, are expecting some of that demand to be pushed out to the March quarter. So there's not a whole lot of concern from Wall Street now. They've tempered their expectations, but it doesn't mean demand's gone for the iPhone. It's just Apple has to get the trains running on time and get their manufacturing back up to speed.
So we don't expect investors to turn around and say, this isn't the rosy picture we were after. Why don't you make cuts like everyone else?
No, I think they understand what's on the horizon, what's coming next week, but we'll have to see how bad these manufacturing issues hit Apple. If it's surprising, if it's much worse than what all the analysts are expecting, I think there could be a chance that there would be questions around layoffs at Apple, and should Apple be doing that too? But we'll have to wait and see how bad this manufacturing hiccup hit Apple.
All right, that was our reporter, Aaron Tilley. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that's it for today's Tech News Briefing. For more tech stories, check out our website, WSJ.com. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.